Okay, welcome back once again to all our listeners, the members of Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing and the distinguished members of all the marketing fraternity in the country. So yet again, we meet you on a very relevant and of course a timely conversation to share share insightful information and share the experience of somebody most of you must be knowing already who it is on a very relevant topic, especially in the context of current conditions of Sri Lanka, which is about building environmental and climate resilience through collaboration and innovation. This is a very important topic for marketers, especially today. The discussion or the focal point has been on how do we position Sri Lanka and how do we enhance the export capacity of Sri Lanka. So these are the kind of conversations we're taking as a resolution to the current economic crisis and the context that we are in. So to have this conversation with us, we have an eminent, an expert in the field of sustainability. She's been the person behind a lot of sustainable initiatives in MAS Holdings, and I will just read some of the key achievements of this particular individual who's going to share her experience with us and the views today with us. Her passion is primarily to solve key sustainable challenges to something I call sustainable disruption. You know, she's a strong believer in the potential to position Sri Lanka as a hub for sustainable manufacturing. Now, not just the MAS as an organization, but as a nation, can we be the hub of sustainable manufacturing is something that she passionately pursues in her current role as well as her previous roles. Currently, she works as the Director of Environmental Sustainability at MAS. That was a previous role, and now she is an Executive Director of the recently established non-for-profit organization that's called the MAS Foundation for Change. So she currently occupies one of only 2 manufacturing seats on the board of directors of the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals initiatives as well. Now, throughout the years, this expert who's going to talk to you she's been driving force in shaping MAS sustainability strategy, in building key stakeholder relationship for the group. Vision for MAS includes championing the practice of sustainable manufacturing as a core function at MAS by implementing the group's integrated sustainability strategy in key areas including renewable energy, chemicals, water, waste, and biodiversity. Right. She has also been instrumental in leading the team of MAS to drive the company's efforts in managing emissions and transitioning to renewable energy, resulting in MAS' recent commitment to the science-based target initiatives. In her current role, she hopes to focus attention on solving the challenges, taking it beyond the organizational initiatives, taking to a national level, and to solve the challenges around marine debris for clean oceans, protecting and restoring biodiversity, and improving access to fresh water for disadvantaged communities in our country. She's a graduate of the University of Nottingham with a degree in industrial economics. She's a strong advocate of the role of women in creators of impact and driving sustainable change. She's none other than Ms. Sharika Senanayaka, who's here to talk to you on a very relevant topic. Sharika, over to you to take us through this journey of sustainability.
Thank you very much. That was a lovely introduction, and I hope that this evening I'd be able to share some of my experience, and hopefully we can have some Q&A after that. I look forward to that discussion. So I'm just going to start with maybe sharing a couple of slides, and I will just put that on to this. Let me see. It's oops.
Yeah, that's visible, Sharika.
Is it visible? Great.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Can you all see me right now? Can my slide?
Yeah, all good.
Super. All right, great. So today I was thinking that we really wanted to talk about how we build environmental resilience through collaboration and innovation. And what I mean by this resilience is, let me just get down to it. We've already, as a world, got ourselves into a pretty urgent stage. Just to share a few thoughts with you, essentially where we are right now is we are putting so much stress that we literally need almost 1 3/4 of an earth, given the amount of pressure we are putting on the ecological footprint. And by what that means is how much we're extracting, how much we're using, how that system can go on. So we've already taken way too much and borrowing way too much from the future generations. We are in what you call in addition to our current economic deficit, where the world in itself is in an ecological deficit, which is a much bigger problem that needs to be sorted out. So I was quite excited to be speaking to this audience. Because it comes, having worked in sustainability for many years, people say, whose responsibility is it? We have an environmental team, they're doing the job. There's a government, they're doing their job. But honestly, I don't think that anybody can say it's one particular department, and everybody needs to be working on this together if we are to try to see the impact that we can create. Now, I'm a big advocate that I think that whilst many people on the at various different roles, no matter where you are, you can influence something. You can influence your own consumption, or you can influence. But let's talk about this audience would probably be really, have a lot of what are the greatest skills of people here. You as marketeers have the ability to change consumerism and society perception. And to be honest, that gives you so much power over any other field to be able to guide people into making the right choices. You can also put them in the other direction. But this is something, for example, I think we were discussing earlier, I talk about an example of a fridge. Right, so some guy who's doing this marketing, they come up with this idea that you have your fridge and you have a particular drawer, and if you put your lettuce and your soggy things in there, that it'll last longer. But what happens is, so you build this whole story that you're going to have a fridge and your food is not going to get wasted. But essentially it does, because it's really not built for keeping this forever. And then you find out, in fact, there was a whole study done on the soggy lettuces, right? And the reason, what happens essentially is this goes directly into waste. And we're not even just talking about the waste that's generated by this lettuce that's going into your fridge, but we're talking about what about all the fertilizer, the water, the transport, that everything down the supply chain gets affected when you're talking about food waste. So even general statistics, they say almost half of the food that we produce today, the new numbers, get wasted. But I feel like there's a huge role, and why I'm saying, can marketers save the planet? I think with the right messaging, with the right interest, there's a huge potential for that. And this urgency and this, what I'm talking about, this responsibility, we're seeing this, we're hearing news about Pakistan, at every nook and corner of the world, there are storms that we wouldn't have seen. And we're being told, and not too far from now, between 2030, 2060, we're going to see these massive changes in temperature. So it's just going to get more and more difficult for us to be able to thrive on this planet. And what's interesting is, you guys have probably heard this, so many times, but we're the first generation to feel the impact of climate change, and the last generation that can do something about it. To me, that's a powerful thing. Barack Obama quoted him, but it made me really think about it, meaning that, we really are the last resort, and it's really up to us to step up to be able to do what we can do. With this in mind, there was a lot of thought for us in how we can support this transition. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what we have done at MAS and the Foundation for Change, which we created to support some of this movement. I mean, MAS, just in case nobody has heard of us, but we're a large apparel and textile manufacturing organization. And, we've always, from the DNA of the organization, felt that we wanted to do our part in being having sustainability in our product and in our environmental footprint. But given our experience, we realize that this is not something that can stop just within our boundaries, but this is something that we want to take at a larger scale. Starting, the foundation will start with Sri Lanka, but we'd like it to be a global foundation everywhere we operate. And we want to use the principles of what we learn in business and apply that very aggressively into how we're trying to sort these issues out. And for us, we realize that it just takes some it just takes some good partners to come together and collaborate. And it needs a few innovations, because I talked to you earlier about the resource requirement and, where we are. We need innovations that are going to help us not manufacture the way we've always done it, not use stuff the way we've all done. We have to think about how products can be redesigned so that they can be reused. How can products be redesigned for either for recycling? These are things that come at every part of the organization. But the foundation was set up to sort a couple of issues, but really a platform for us to bring in these innovative solution partners, to bring in partners who want to do a part of the implementation and try to bring in work, and also to be, not everybody can have large environmental teams, but want to be a part of the movement. And we want to be supporting them in driving this movement. And what we want to also offer is that 100% of whatever funding that comes into the foundation will go directly into the project. So it wouldn't be something that we are taking to run our overheads. It'll be something that you would want to put into the project. I mean, this is one way we're hoping to speed up even people who don't have sophisticated environmental teams to come and say, look, we're happy to, would you be able to support us with this kind of implementation? So it's almost like no excuses. Here's some bunch of ways in which you can really get involved, which has great impact. Like all things, I think it's important for us to, focus on a few things and, stick to some ideas that we have done before and know that we can work on. So cleaner oceans is an area that we've been passionate about for a while, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do in that area. We're also looking at the biodiversity and water space. But with this, all these three areas, and within this space, we're looking at education, research, advocacy, action, and really a collective way into solving these issues. Now, when it comes to the cleaner ocean side, we've looked at doing a couple of things. So one thing was we've created what you call an ocean strainer. I'll show you some pictures of that. We've started thinking about all the marine debris going in from the river into the sea. And we've also said, okay, if we can build this entire barrier around the island that can stop the leakage of this waste, we also need to work on how the waste management per se, also that we're looking at circularity models around it. So we've been, playing in this space for a while, since 2015. We were doing these beach cleanups. Many of you may have seen our Sri Lankan cricket team, which was made out of the ocean's PET that was converted into polyester yarn. And this is 100% polyester product that is recyclable, that was put in the market. But this jersey was done in 2019. But we are looking at ways, and now when we were doing these cleanups, just a story, you can see that picture on there. We'd clean this up one day and you come back in a week and it's exactly the same, really demotivating. So we realized that about 80% of this was happening upstream. So we started saying, look, what if we just thought of putting this barrier upstream so that we could stop it at that point before it got onto the beaches, because when it gets onto the beach and the sea, it's contaminated and the ability to recycle is so much more harder. So we decided to pilot something. We put this, we created this, what we call the strainer at the Dehivala Canal. It's up there for anyone to go see if you haven't already seen it. And what it's essentially doing is trapping the trash that is floating, the marine debris, but it's there's enough movement for any of the marine life to go underneath, so it's not catching any fish or anything like this. And we were working around it. We've had some support again, an NGO called Clean Oceans Force. They've been, working so hard at trying to figure out, getting the waste out. We've been working with the SLLDC and the various different organizations to try and get this right. And then finally, after about a year of running it, and mind you, this was during COVID time where there's less people leaving their houses, we were finding that almost between 500 kgs to a week to 1.7 kgs, that's like 1,700 kgs, like 1.7 tons of waste per week were getting caught in these strainers. So what MAS did was we decided to take the tech and open IP it and said, look, guys, why don't anyone who wants to do it, please design, just, tag us on it. So we want to be, track where everything is going. But we found that a lot of organizations didn't want to go through this entire process that we had gone in, had gone through to get all of the permission to work with the various agencies. So a part of the foundation said, okay, fine, we'll do all of that work for you, and we will help you to put these trainers in the water and help us in the overall mission for the country. So since the foundation was actually set up in April, we've we've put 10 in the water already. There's 5 more coming in, and as you can see, most of them were done by non-MAS companies as well, lots of donors, and in fact, the government themselves did 5 of these using the same tech. So, I mean, when the government's using your tech and actually doing it and seeing value, this was sometime over a year ago, we find that, okay, there's acceptance of the technology. This is not something too difficult to do. This is something that just needs a little bit of, time and effort to get going. So we see all these trainers, and the thing about these things is it's evolving and it's making us think of things. Like you see, if you look up there, you can see that the floating, that Japan Jabra, which becomes a problem when you have this trainer, even that is constricted from growing. So we're trying to think about, oh, is that something that, we can look at? And we've also started testing techs, like, is there any way in which we can absorb the floating oil? Because that's another huge problem. So we're looking for partners to step up and say, look, these are solutions. Can we add it onto your technology? Can we play around with it? So that's the kind of collaboration that we're really, really open to doing. Likewise, we realize that whilst this works where there's no boat traffic, when you have rivers, how are you able to stop the floating trash? You have this massive amounts of waste, especially during rainy weather going in. So there was a group of boys who had designed a company called Kyle Technologies that done this. This is like a catamaran, a boat. You can see a seat on it, and they had designed this. So together with IUC and MA sponsored this, and it's being built by Lanka as a prototype. It's sort of a big boat that will go out, and it will start, we'll be testing it to see if it will work on where rivers are. So we've seen a lot of these things internationally done. They've been called interceptors and various other things, but we needed something built within the local budget and what we would be able to afford. And the thing about making it the right price point is we don't just want one. We need at least 10 or 15 of these, in the water within the year or so, with the type of numbers that we are actually seeing coming out of that. So a big question that everybody says is, waste management is absolutely critical, because if you take what we are due to collect by the end of the year, we would have collected 500,000 tons of waste out of from going into the ocean. So 500,000 tons of waste going in needs to be managed. Now, currently, this is very, very challenging. And this is where a crux of the problem is, and we're trying to solve it. We try to send some of it. So right now we've got segregators on site in some of the areas where we're trying to extract as much of the stuff that's recyclable, because sending this from, from the ocean to landfill isn't the answer. So how do we keep this in the system? And this is a huge part of what we really rack our brains on a daily basis. We knock on doors trying to ask various organizations if they've got ideas and what we can do with it. The main success for us in going through, and we would like to see a lot more names on this, but we want to see other corporates within our industry or outside our industry, or anybody coming and saying, okay, this is something doable. How do we collaborate and work together? These are not massively expensive projects. I mean, some of the strainers, and I'm sharing these costs because I would like someone watching this go, oh, okay, 1.5 million, I can do that. That's what a hoarding costs, a big page costs. So if I do, a page every weekend, maybe I can do one every other weekend and then do a strainer with you guys. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I would like, marketing people to start thinking about. And this is the type of positive consumer reaction you would want as well. There is an ROI on that kind of ideas. So that's a little bit on the strainer. We also have a massive challenge around biodiversity in Sri Lanka. I mean, MAS has been working on this for many years. We've already done about 2,500 acres, but we have a massive commitment to try to get this going. Now, again, here, when it comes to supporting a thriving planet, we're not just trying to do this just by ourselves. We're trying to talk to partners like WNPS. They have fabulous programs like the Emerald Trail and all of that. And we say, okay, we're not trying to, create our own strategy. We are just trying to say, okay, what is your strategy? How do we make that come alive, and how do we support you in that? Because that makes more sense if everybody's, rowing in the same direction. So, I mean, that's kind of what we're working around. A less area of where we've been around is we still realize there's a water equity issue, not only in Sri Lanka, it's less, but in other areas that we operate around the world, especially Kenya, etc. And we would really want to put our focus into figuring out how we can, support disadvantaged communities, that this should be a right by, in today's context, it's ridiculous that this clean freshwater access is not available. And in this area, again, this is work in progress for us, but it's something that we are really keen on trying to crack and solve, because we think it's an issue, especially if you take Sri Lanka. I think this number must be 2 million people, right? I mean, surely if a couple of big corporates get together, put our heads and say, let's make that zero. Let's make ourselves, that nobody in Sri Lanka has a problem with accessing fresh water. I mean, that definitely is something. Another thing we want to do is, initially I've said, we want to create and enable volunteerism within our organization, but we also want to have that for external parties also to work with us, so that we feel that, this is something that will bring about more ideas. If you're actually on the field with us in doing certain projects, this is where some of the ideas of innovation come in. This is where companies start feeling comfortable to work with each other and share that space. So we feel this is a big part of, where we would also want to engage people. So, it's not, again, there's a department doing this, but, we feel a part of it. So, I mean, this is sort of the last slide I have. And, it's sort of, we are just one example of an organization that is working on collaboration, innovation, and partnership. There are many others out there, but my call today and into this audience really is that you have the power to make these relationships, whichever relationships you want to work, because I personally feel trying to do a lot of these things by yourself doesn't work. It's always far more powerful, actually, if we're working with, with a group and, working collectively to try and solve at least a few big issues together, and I think the impact will be great. So we're happy to support anyone as well from the foundation, but really look forward to any ideas or anything that anyone would want to work with us. So that was what I wanted to share today. I hope that was.
Yeah, I think thank you, Sharika. Definitely, it is an eye opener for, I'm sure, many of the marketers who's here on the forum. But also, I think importantly, the message that you're trying to drive here is about how the space that MAS has, as an organization, has gone into, and it's very special, and it's noteworthy to mention that you're quite open about. You're looking at this whole idea of collaboration to create that larger impact. So I think somebody down the line taking a lead, and how can we, the marketing fraternity and also the rest of the organization who represent these marketers here, can really be an integral part of the initiatives that already is being taken by the MS Foundation for Change, as well as before that the other initiatives. So I mean, so some of the areas that I want to go into bit detail, just to try and give some clarity to our members, is to the first thing. I think I'll start with the first 2-3 slides that you did talk about, very important concepts in terms of 3 words that you used: urgency, responsibility, and also the impact. Now, while you were sharing some of these slides, I mean, I was just looking at the images of, those tons and tons of plastic waste that you just collected from one strainer. And I think the word responsibility was just, really highlighting in front of my face when I looked at it. I mean, unless until, I mean, it has to be that one organization like MAS who had to take the initiative to collect it. What would have happened to that load of plastic, and who is really responsible? I think, I mean, we're talking about marketing is all about, like you rightly identified, that there is about creating traction, getting consumers to buy in, not just to a product, but to a service, but to an idea or a concept. Now, when it comes to responsibility, how do you see that we can address this issue? Surely, as a nation, we are all responsible to some extent, and definitely the organizations who's also involved in bringing this product to life has to play a large part in the responsibility domain. And how do you really see what can we do about it? I mean, what can the organization do to start with there? And then, I mean, should it I mean, get into all of us into a consensus that, how do we really deal with this responsibility part? It's clearly I would say, a negligence on responsibility in terms of, this is not a problem only for Sri Lanka, but it's globally we see this. So what would be your advice or a suggestion for the organizations who want to take an active role in this and sharing this responsibility? What can be done?
Well, I mean, I have spent a lot of time firstly looking at this waste, thinking lots of, big brand names popping into my head. But really the first thing, and there are 2 parts of this, right? None of this waste obviously was intentionally set out there. Even, very few people went and threw it out. But the point is, it does get there and it cannot be controlled. And these things are going to be, you drink that drink for a couple of seconds, you have that, it could be a packet of noodles, it could be a biscuit wrapper. Those are the kinds of things that are ending up there. To me, I think that the biggest challenge is that the waste is undervalued. Because if I was looking at that waste and thought about what the money that was trapped in there, I mean, somebody spent some money getting that packaging, right? And the problem is we keep going and getting new packaging, and we get, of course, that can't go into the food grade, but we kept creating new things from new virgin material and keep extracting. So for me, the biggest thing is, if somebody looked at that pile and gave me a valuation and said that what cost is worth, you have 20,000 rupees of packaging there, right, that can be used. So monetizing and the true cost of that waste would really, and we do need companies and recyclers coming and seeing that value, right? What can I do with this raw material that could convert into money? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think we are going to have certain policies coming out through the government. And we need, as brands, also to brace ourselves and say, look, the extended producer manufacturing responsibility, that's what it's called. So the producer is now responsible for the packaging, right? And there are going to be laws and there are going to be taxes around that. So it makes business sense to figure out how you can stop that whether it is, reduce that amount, because the last thing you want for your brand, it's going to cost you far more in millions of dollars trying to deal with the naming and shaming that will happen with your brand, than you just actually getting that effort to get that waste out of there when there is tech and when there's opportunities to do it. And you don't have to necessarily, overthink this, right? You've got to say, anybody who brings my bottle back with my brand or whatever, I don't know, you're a part of some kind of raffle or draw or something really exciting enough. I mean, and create that. As marketers, I'm sure you can think of a way how to have that return back. If somebody said, I don't know, most of you, I don't know the age group of people watching this, but if you had those milk bottles delivered to your house, I mean, if you had 10 bottles, if you didn't break it, you were taking back 10 bottles. There was no way we were messing around with those glass bottles. So I'm just saying that we need to add value, and why it was because you were paying a deposit for it, right? And that's just the thing. What I would recommend, that we find ways on bringing value for the waste, and then it won't be waste. It'll be a raw material for something.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point that you really can raised there, Sharika. I think if you look at the current context, we all know it's inflation, and then the cost of living is going up, cost of operations for organization is going up, and we are all under pressure for profitability as an organization. And then on the other side, we have this packaging materials, which, like you rightly mentioned, we've incurred a large cost and just getting wasted, and nobody's really making sense out of it. So I think it's really a good time for us as a nation and as organizations to look back into this mechanism to see how do we, this component that we consider waste is actually not waste. It's actually money. It's actually, an asset or a cash flow or working capital, whatever you want to call it. It is just not put to use. So yeah. I think the first step is like, can we get marketers to rethink these packaging materials, and in terms of the reuses of the packaging materials, I know some of the organizations that do this quite successfully, at least one or two or few of them. I remember one of the beverage company that had initiatives to collect the bottles outside the retailers and then use it. So, but I think what we really need is more initiatives coming through on that note. So.
Absolutely. I mean, in other countries also, I was just saying, my friend was saying in somebody who'd visited Sweden, they will take their bottles, they'll put it into a vending machine, and then you get coupons to get that value out from your supermarket, or you donate it to charity. I mean, this kind of tech has been there for the last 20 years. It's just a matter of when are they going to see that, for example, our shampoo bottles or our soap, hand wash, or whatever it is, when are we going to get dispenser systems? I mean, I don't understand why that is so hard. Because you're not really making money on the packaging, right? Anyway, so if you could just take back your, and buy that in volume or whatever it is, how do we just have those processes in place where, because we've actually only come into this, if you talk about it, most of us before the supermarkets, in Sri Lanka, the supermarkets have become a big thing in the last 20 years. But before that, everybody was going to the polar. They were not putting individual plastic bags of everything. Now, God forbid if the tomatoes touch the carrots. I mean, you're just like, you need to individually pack them. So, and this is just it. We need to reverse and think about what we're doing these for and what value it has.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thought that we can really take home from today's discussion. How do we really make use of it? On coming back to the impact part of it, I know, Sharika, you did mention about the impact to the society. I mean, Raja, impact to the environment and the society and the nation. Now, there are a lot of times the marketers are asked a question of, I mean, I'm just shifting that to the other side of the coin. What is the impact to the organization? How is this going to impact? Because this had been always a question that a lot of the marketers have to deal with, because it is considered that every time you take up an initiative, I mean, it's always the question is, yes, I understand there is impact to the society and the community by and large, but what's the impact to the organization? What do you, I mean, if what can you tell about that? I mean, how will this really help the businesses? Other than on over and above the impact to the society, how can this impact their own businesses, on their brands or positioning? when you come to address these sustainability related initiatives?
So I think it needs to be thought of as a long game, to be honest. I'm going to take Sri Lanka as an example because I understand this market much better. If you're an organization that uses water, in Sri Lanka, water is highly subsidized. Right. So we think of water as free, but you have to understand that there are certain policies that are coming in. We may have had plenty of water, but the quality of water, all of that, the price of water, that could change at any minute and completely disrupt your organization. So if your organization is dependent on natural resources, which we know are depleting, like even in terms of energy, etc., I mean, you've really got to build that risk. I mean, the way we would think from an MA's point of view, we think of it as a risk mitigation. The less dependent you are on natural resources, the less risk you are of completely having someone, mess with your entire business plan. I mean, just think about it. I'm not sure of the numbers, but if something was to cost 5 rupees and then they say, oh, that's completely subsidized, it's wrong, it's now costing 500 rupees or 100 rupees, which is very likely to happen, you're going to find yourself, your entire business model is going to fall apart. So the first thing I would say is think, is this activity I am going to do reducing and decoupling me from the environmental risks I'm going to have? That would be the first thing. The second thing is there's a big part in a movement. I mean, any of you who know anyone who's, the younger, generation or whatever it is, they will ask for transparency. Who made this? How did you make it? So if you want to build your brand for longevity, there are questions that you're going to have to answer. And there are other brands that will answer that question and disrupt you if you're not ahead of the game. Likewise, if you're an exporter, how do you, I'm saying the best way in which we can separate ourselves is on this sustainable space. You will not be able to, if you're not looking at bringing down your emissions, you will have problems exporting to Europe. If you're not being able to talk about your traceability, you will have problems exporting to America. So these are things whether you like it or not. I mean, if you're just thinking of the next 2-3 years and just getting away with it, that's fine. But in those 2-3 years that you think you can get away with it, somebody can come and disrupt you in that space and completely change the game for you. So I don't think that it's any longer something that you cannot think of as a business strategy, because this is going to help you last in the long term is one approach, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you just exactly connected to my next question. So when you talked about strategy, I think we all know strategy is about having that competitive advantage. So, gone are the days where if you are doing sustainability, that is considered as something unique that you have a special value. And it's not anymore, isn't it? I mean, it has become a basic hygiene factor that if you don't do, you're not fit to the game in terms of international business. So, I mean, it's not an added advantage anymore. It's not going to be a competitive edge, but it's just that you are not going to even fit into the lot if you're not really looking into this as your long-term objectives or your impact. So on that context, just trying to understand now when it's come to MA specifically. Now we know MAs as an organization has evolved and it's definitely known by everyone in Sri Lanka and who has constantly kept pursuing your export journey, the international. I mean, literally, I mean, I would say to larger extent, you're predominantly an export organization. Now, how did this early intervention in early steps into building sustainability into your business strategy, how has that helped MAS to build that unique position among the top clients around the world? I mean, how this has really helped you? I mean, I'm surely that will help many other marketers, organizations to kind of get something out of it. If you could just briefly explain us what ways.
That's a really interesting question. Because you see, the thing about sustainability is, or with the environment and the rules and the regulations, they spring it on you. So if you haven't been on this journey, for example, if you're exporting into Europe, you'll find that they would want to know, what your carbon emissions, and you have to reduce this by X percentage every year. So if you aren't planned for it, if it's not a part of your strategy, you're closing up an entire potential export market. For us, so what I'm trying to say is that it has to be a planned journey, that you're not a knee-jerk reaction, because it's impossible for you to suddenly start reducing your emissions, right? Or for you to suddenly start reducing the amount of water intake. It's a slow process which should have been started a few years ago. But if you haven't started it, what you're going to find is that you're not going to be able to catch up with the guys who've already started it. I mean, essentially. So in terms of how does it help in integrating it into your business, is to understand whether someone else is going to do this before you. No matter what you're making, manufacturing, what service you're doing, somebody else is going to do this better. I mean, you could be IT services and somebody will come and say, okay, my IT services is carbon neutral, because for every something of using the way that we manage our servers, etc. Everything, there's a way in which somebody is going to come and be ahead of you, and they would have taken about 2-3 years to plan this. Our approach has always been, we didn't do it for anybody else. We did it for ourselves. So, I mean, that's what's so unique about where we were, because we were not responding to a customer. We were not responding to a product. We were responding to how will MAs thrive in a world that is going to be adversely affected by climate change. We know climate change is coming. There is no point putting your head in the sand and pretending like it's not going to happen. Not like it's not going to happen in 5 years, 10 years. It's happening. So how are we going to build in that resilience for the future generations of our organization and, working with it? So we were pretty genuine about what we needed to do. And when you're genuine, it creates a very strong foundation. And so essentially, no matter what they throw at us, we are kind of prepared. We're able to be agile because you've created that foundation. And so my comment to that is, it needs to be unique to you. You need to first know what is most material to you. What are your biggest vulnerabilities? Where will your surprises come from? Right? Those are the questions that I would ask ourselves. When I mean surprises, like, would it be your consumer will surprise you by boycotting you, or you'll have Greenpeace making a comment about you, or you will have some sort of naming and shaming, or one of your raw materials will suddenly get either cut or taxed, which is from natural resources. They'll say, there's a water limit. You can't take this. So these are things you need to put material to you. How will you build an organization that's going to survive in the next 5 to 10 years? Put those strategies into what makes business sense for you. What can you not live without? And make sure you're building resilience around it. I mean, that's what I would say.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sharika. Definitely, it gives us a kind of a step or a guideline to follow. Now, I mean, I'm sure many of the marketers also do understand then there is important aspect to sustainability. But I think if I am to say that it's this concept of sustainability is also to an extent highly jargonized. I think we did have this touch. I mean, it is a notion to say that it's sustainability in itself is a lot of science. You need experts. A normal organization cannot really think about sustainability. So I just want to know, is it really the case, or it's just a myth, or it's just the way that we perceive about sustainability? How can we simplify sustainability and move from a jargon to an action? And how can we make it simple for every single organization to embrace this sustainability we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I think the marketing guys need to step up and understand what's going on, because I mean, really, there is a lot of technology, words that we use, but nothing that can't be translated into, into something simple. And this is the big value of where I think the marketing people come and understand what this jargon is trying to say. Right. I mean, what is the meaning of, you say SBTI, science-based targets? What does that mean? Right. What does it mean for my organization? It means that, if I don't do something for emissions, what's going to happen is that I am going to get myself into a bigger mess. And these are the, in many different ways, from a publicity perspective and in an actual, flood or drought or whatever it is. And if I'm not being seen to do my part and, I get left behind, it's going to be an issue. So for me, really, the jargon has been a reason for, I think, the speed at which we could have been going through. So I would actually say it is definitely the responsibility of the marketing team to understand, because I mean, there is jargon, but this jargon, you don't need a degree to understand it. Everybody can get it, and to be able to translate it into ways in which a consumer can also relate it to it. Because the other thing that a lot of, marketing folks can also do is confuse the consumer. Right. And what I'd also encourage the marketing people not to do is to jump to conclusions when they hear a keyword, like you hear biodegradable, they'll be like, okay, this is an environmental product. Not to just to take a little bit of effort and say, what do you mean by biodegradable? Does it mean it's going to break into small pieces and solve some kind of issue? Do you mean it's plant-based, so nothing will happen if a bird eats the little pieces? What does this mean, right? And to really explain that to the consumer, right? What effort has been put in as well. So if you take that jargon and make that jargon into English, it can really be a powerful marketing tool for you to differentiate yourself. And many people are actually doing, I think, especially in our part of the world, a lot of sustainable things, and they don't even realize it. And the marketing guys are not taking advantage of that. So I mean, to me, I feel like it is time, if you're in the space of marketing, to get yourself educated on these terms, because you're just going to get left behind. And I work with a lot of international brands, and they're all speaking that language. So I think that, whatever we can do to make sure everybody's up to speed on that needs to happen for us to be competitive in the long run.
Yeah, so marketers, that's the message for you. Get into the driving seat and drive this agenda for you and your organizations, and especially to the country. I mean, I think I'm just wanted to get to that point. We did discuss, and I saw that in your slide as well, Sharika. We've always looked at what is that Sri Lanka has to offer as a nation. We've always looked at, again, I'm raising the context in which we are having this discussion today. It's about, the economic crisis and the challenges that we have to face. But what is the real value proposition Sri Lanka can offer to the international world? We are definitely not the price competitors. We are not there to compete with the likes of China or the Vietnam or any other low price production countries. But we should have something special. So what's your view, and like how special we are in this position to really take this message across the world that Sri Lanka is a country where it's come with a lot of sustainability inbuilt into their products and services. You people like MAS have taken that lead. So, I mean, what do you think we should do as marketers to really take Sri Lanka to that position where everybody else actually start talking about products from Sri Lanka should be sustainable? Do we have a huge opportunity there, according to you?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because, as I said before, it's a dream that I think we should all have. And it goes back to the title of this presentation. If we were to collaborate and innovate before anyone else as an island, we can easily become one of the most sustainable manufacturing hubs. How? Why? If we clean our waterways, which is not, and I showed you, it's tons of waste going in, but if we do it right together, because none of us, you can be MAs, you can be whomever, alone, we cannot do this. But if we had all of, or at least many of the big organizations, small organizations, NGOs collaborating, and this is a key thing, I'm talking about this collaboration to try and fix this problem. Because we're such a small island, we are easy to fix. We are not like, it's not trying to fix India or America or China. We're a tiny island with, 22 million people. We can do this. Our seas are still pretty much the best in the world. If we stop this plastic going in, we're supporting the tourism industry, the fisheries industry, from an ecological perspective. What does it take? I mean, it takes us building, I'm not going to put a number to it, but whatever number I'm sure I'll throw forward as a collaborative effort, we could do it. Sri Lanka has some of the greatest innovators, I think, coming out. We have brilliant ideas. We could make all of these things and be fairly self-sufficient to have those things. So my real take on this is that Sri Lanka, without, again, the responsibility, without waiting for somebody else or pointing fingers at somebody else, people who want to do something about it, just step up. You don't have to work with MAs. You can work with 5 other people you like. It doesn't matter whom, but do something, right? I mean, do something that works for you. And I'm saying you do something simple to start with. Don't try to do the most complex thing, because it's not necessary. Because if we just do the simple things, we can leave the complex things to the people who have that, want to do it. I'm saying just start somewhere, because that is what's going to move our entire nation to, when somebody wants to manufacture from this and they come out and, word is out that we have protected our rainforests, our waters are clean, our streets are clean, we're waste free, we have this, our air quality is amazing. Those are the things that anybody who wants to work with, the moment you talk about where were my clothes made, they were made in Sri Lanka by empowered women or whomever it is, breathing fresh air, having fresh food, etc. It makes us as a country far more competitive. And I think in whatever we manufacture, and it's something that definitely is something that we can achieve quite quickly if people collaborate.
That's a very promising, recommendation that's coming from you, Sharika. I think it's a very important aspect. We've all looked for reasons, and these are the time we are really looking for what are those positives that's within us. We have ample of them. You did mention many of them. I think we've just taken things for granted. Looks like we just don't have to go too far to kind of get Sri Lanka into the global map. Especially in this manufacturing journey, we always worry about how do we compete when it comes to low price producers. But I think not realizing we are blessed in abundance in terms of naturally we are blessed to have all these aspects favorable towards us. We always talk about strategic position, geographical position of the country, but we don't really put much emphasis on the strategic positioning we have on being a sustainability hub to the world, or to the region at least. I don't think any other markets close to us in the South Asia region can compete with us if we get our act together on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think on that note, Sharika, again, it's like where can somebody start this journey? Because I know MS did very early on, maybe a decade or two ago. You got the whole sustainability together, act together. You've been, really championing this journey for the MS. Now, the rest of the companies who always think there are some mind barriers. Because being in the fraternity, I've always understood statements like, sustainability is expensive. Sustainability means it's a cost and the consumer doesn't want to pay for it. These are the kind of challenges that many marketers have, even to align strategic leadership. So if we are to advise somebody to start with, where should they really start? Because sustainability now it's evolved and there's a lot of things that's been in discussion. Net zero, carbon footprint, it's a lot of stuff. But where can somebody really start this journey if someone has not really thought about it? What would be your advice for such organizations?
So I'm not necessarily in order, but I'll talk about some of the easier ones to do, and that add value, right? So looking at your supply chain and figuring out where's the waste, right? Where is there waste in my packaging? Do I need to give this kind of packaging? I can actually save money. Like, sometimes I put a bag inside a bag and just, for whatever. Am I transporting goods to my supplier with too much of the packaging? Can I not think of every time I have to send a carton, it's a carton? Even large organizations like MS, they have those plastic boxes that give some and we take it back. So there's no need of, a new box every single time. So can I look at how I deliver my goods? Can I look at how frequently I deliver my goods to reduce my emissions, to be more? So the thing about sustainability is it's reducing the waste, but that's actually adding value to your line, right? So even in terms of your tag, your hand tag, I mean, how many unnecessary things are on that? What if we just had like a QR code somewhere, if anybody wants to know? No, as you get it, you pull out, you buy a shirt from somewhere, you pull out 2 odd pins from here, you pull the packaging out, you just throw at least so many grams of waste there, you think, do I actually need this? Like, what, what is going to happen if I don't have those two plasticky bits here, right? Can I replace that with something else? The stuff that goes around your collar or whatever it is. Can I, even when I'm doing some kind of I don't know, some food-based thing, how many bits of, do I need to have a box plus a bag plus a this plus a that, right? Are there ways of, and when you start reducing it and you start thinking about it, you're like, okay, I can actually reduce my packaging by so many grams, which means I move to something cheaper, which means it's adding value to me. So I would start saying, where's the wastage? And that wastage in whether it's packaging, whether it's travel, transport, all of that put together will give you an immediate ROI, right? And how do you change the culture within your organization and say, guys, look, I am having to deal with all of this waste that y'all are generating here. How about having, waste-free policies, asking people to bring their own drink bottles, not having to, have these not having all these various things accumulating in your waste management, right? Because that's also an issue in your offices. There's tons, and look at ways, even in terms of, food waste and all of that you drive programs. How can you reduce it? How can you segregate? Those are, waste is an area where I think if somebody sat down and started, writing the types of waste, which is exactly at MS, we did an audit and said, okay, where are the waste within the organization? Where are the waste within the products? Where's the waste within the supply chain? Right? And you start thinking about it within about 10, 20 minutes of identifying that. And I'm sure I can see you thinking in your own head the type of waste that's being generated, either in your, business or whatever it is. You can take that. And what does that mean? That means money in your pocket for you as well. Just saying, hey, why am I giving that? I'm like, whatever it is. The other areas that are very expensive now is in terms of energy, and in Sri Lanka right now, it's very costly. It's difficult. Are there solutions in the ROI now to look at solar and battery and, having business continuity also in the long run? We know energy is going to be a crisis. Can we think about using things that are less energy intensive and ways in which we're doing it, or look at renewable options as well? And, those are some sort of basic things. I would say start with energy, start with waste. And also, I mean, even when it comes to emissions, travel, transport, those are things that, if all of that was streamlined, you are actually saving money there. And then you go into the slightly more sophisticated things later on. What are the types of chemicals I'm using? Even when it comes to chemicals and dyes and, baths and all of that, there's a lot of toxicity involved that's going straight into the water. But when you start using those natural products, etc., and you start looking at that dyeing process, there is also a new story to refresh your whole, your marketing position as well. So, I mean, those are some of the areas that I think you can start with. And I don't know, having done sustainability a while for the organization, almost every change that we've made has been more of an investment to us. Nothing has been a liability as such. I would say something that's not directly connected is in areas of biodiversity, but the value that has brought in the stories we're able to tell, in the connections and that it has with the people, I would say, we just don't know how to measure it. So when you're doing that kind of good in all aspects and genuinely doing it without trying to, greenwash it, you can't go wrong. There is definitely value for you.
Absolutely, some really useful tips, Sharika. Thank you very much for all of those insights, advices, and also real guidelines. I'm sure somebody who's really not familiar in this space, there'll be some super insights that you provided. I mean, that takes us is what you're actually suggesting is part of the elements of circular economy, isn't it? You talked about reduce, reuse, and recycle. There's three simple words, but can come with huge impact to you, I mean, to us as individuals, but also largely to our organizations, because I want to actually go down there as my last point to the first point that you mentioned. It's all about the impact to the individual, impact to the organization, impact to the community, societies, and nation, and overall as to the whole world. because you said something very insightful, or something that to really think about, is we are the first generation to feel the impact,
Of
and
climate change.
we are also the last generation to do something about it. So I think this is a very strong statement. You quoted the former president, I think, Barack Obama. So I think there's a lot of thought for us, and this really calls out to all the marketers for action. So there are a couple of, just to summarize some of the key discussions we've had today. We looked at how this whole sustainability can we create a larger impact through collaboration, and there is some open invitation from MAS, Foundation for Change, on all the marketers. If we get together, can we be the solution rather than blaming the problems and becoming an excuse to what we are in? Can we be a part of a solution to take Sri Lanka global, to position, to give Sri Lanka a new identity? We certainly can if we work together. I think so. That's invitation and a suggestion that's going out to all the marketers. Last, to wrap up, there's some interesting conversation and many questions in my list, but unfortunately, that's all the time we got. How can marketers, what should be, if you tell what should be the key role of a marketer to take the Sri Lanka to that level? Where should they start? Should they start about learning, communicating, getting stakeholders involved? Where should they start, and what will be advice to all the marketers out there who's listening to Sharika?
Sure. So I think be honest with yourself, the first thing, right? Look at your product and just be honest with yourself. Am I adding value or am I causing trouble, right? I mean, the first thing. If your question is, I'm adding value, there's nothing else I can do, I've done everything in the world or whatever it is, I don't know, but that would be an amazing business model. But where is the trouble that I'm causing? What am I going to get? What do I identify that is my mistake that only I know now, but somebody is going to catch me out soon, right? And I think my advice is be honest with yourself and just think about what is there a solution to get over it, right? I mean, is there something that we can do, whether you can do individually as your organization, do it quietly, do it with partners, ask for help, bring it up to your board going, it's going to catch up with you. So my advice is it's not a complicated thing. The expectation on every brand, on every person is for everyone to be, step up. Remember, we have borrowed way too much from the future generation. We need to do something now. You don't have to have and also the thing about the plan is don't make it a 100-year plan or a 50-year plan or whatever it is. Try and figure out what are sort of, we say the low-hanging fruit, what are the simple things you can do, or even if you can do one thing that has great impact, you don't need to do 50 things. I mean, that'll be fine. So, and if you don't know, my question is ask someone, collaborate. Be open with it, have that sense of confidence that you can talk to someone and say, look, this is where I am. I would like to do better. How does that work? And in many cases, you'll be really surprised because in this space, when it comes to sustainability, in my opinion, and what MAS has always stood for, it's the one area that people are willing to share because, this is we're fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for humanity, right? So that profit will, somebody said, actually, I remember that, try holding your nose and counting your money, right? So if we can't breathe, none of that profit is going to make sense to us. So on that note, marketers, I think you guys have the best position to shift this and to shift the way in which we can go into an exponential growth on the sustainable side. And my one thing is just be honest with yourself. The answers will come to you when you sit down and write it down and be like, oh, okay, this is the problem. You don't need any degree or any consultant for that.
Absolutely, a powerful end to the conversation. Thank you very much, Sharika, once again for really, it's an eye opener for many of us, including myself. I've learned a lot and got a lot of insights in order to how do we pursue this journey. And we have a larger responsibility. I think we have to remind ourselves about that responsibility for our future generations, for our nation, and our organizations as well. So all of us are part of this. And remember, the very first word Sharika used is the sense of urgency. It's not about action tomorrow, it's action now. We are already too late. So on that note, I would like to extend my appreciation to the President of Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing, the Vice President and two Vice Presidents and the Executive Council. Also, the Sling membership team who's behind this to bringing this forum to you every now and then, bringing the right experts with the right topics to have a conversation to try and give some insights and support you marketers and your efforts and the initiatives. Slim staff, including the CEO and everybody who worked towards to make this a success. And once again, a big note of thanks to and appreciation to you, Sharika, sparing your time. We know you have busy schedules, but despite all that, you came forward to share your views and thoughts. Really appreciate. And on we will meet once again, reminding you that when we wanted to build up two cancer hospitals, we did something called TRAIL. And every single individual organization to a larger extent supported it, and we achieved it. I think it's a call for another national cause. Probably we organizations, we marketers should even look at forming another consortium or a forum where we could all come together and take Sri Lanka to that position of being a sustainable hub in Asia or South Asia. I think that's a call to action I would like to make personally on behalf of the fraternity, and I'm sure we have the support and the guidance on the likes of MAS and the rest of the organizations. So thank you very much. We can always reach out to the experts, but let's start from where we can on this journey. Reminding you, have a pleasant evening until we meet again. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharika.